Hi everybody, this is Pam with Jesus Junk Journals, and here we go. We're getting ready for our weekly challenge, and the scripture this week is Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And then we have the parameters are doodle circles, the color blue, and a hole. So H-O-L-E. So those three things, however you interpret them, whatever that makes you think of, those are your challenges for the week, the prompts. So doodle circles, blue, and a hole. So I do think I've kind of been wanting to do something where you take like a magazine picture and then you blend it with your paints and stuff. And so I kind of have that in the back of my mind. I'm just trying to think how this works. So what to do first. So I think I'm going to start with the color blue. And I think I'll put something over this to protect it. So hang on just a second. Okay, I'm just going to use a piece of this plastic that I had for a table cover. I actually just pulled that out of the trash. And masking tape, maybe that'll work. Okay, so I'm going to have to be a little bit careful. So I'm going to get my Lindy sprays out, and I'm going to get the Tibetan Poppy Teal and Time Travel Teal, which are very similar actually. One's a little more blue-green. Let that drip on there. And let's see if this even looks any different. A little bit, not much. Okay, so pretty good covering of that. So there's my blue. I've got my acrylic ink too, my Liquitex. And if I use my spray water, I wonder. If I can get some. Got things all stacked up on each other here. I think I'm just going to leave it up there at the top. Okay, so I've got my blue prompt, and now I need to figure out the one that says a hole. And I was thinking about, like, do I want to cut a hole in this and then put something behind it? I wonder if I can get away with cutting out something and having it look like it's like we're looking through a hole. So I need to look through, I'm going to look through my magazine prints that I've pulled out here and see if I have anything. I'm thinking kind of like dream sort of looking stuff, because we're talking about faith and conviction of things not seen. So, you know, maybe it's like an idealized image of some sort, maybe. Okay, I have an idea for the hole. I'm going to make I think I'm going to do the doodle circles on a separate piece of paper and cut them out, and then the middle of the circle will be the hole, and I could put those around maybe some of these idealized images. So what I'm going to do is go down, and I've got more magazines downstairs. I'm going to go look through my old magazines and see if I can find an image that feels the way I want it to feel. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll be back with my image. Wow, I am very unsure about what to do here. I got my photos, and it took me a long time, so it's a good thing I had the camera turned off. I've got some images that I like, but I'm not sure exactly how to go about combining them. So, you know, just like always, this is just sort of a experiment. So I'm just going to glue these down, and then that will force me to deal with it. That's usually how I do things. So get this matte gel medium, and I kind of feel like this should probably go over here, because that seems like with that straight edge should go there. We'll see. And my sprays are probably going to get disappeared and you won't even realize I did it, but at least it gave me a false sense of security about starting. So it got me moving. That's about all I can say for it. So, all right, I'm going to flip this over and just try to put this up here on the edge. And glue as much of it down as I can. Looks like didn't get that done very well. Okay. All right, and then put this down. And then I like this little fence, so I'm just going to glue it down here. I haven't really used magazine images that much, and so what I have quickly found out is it's very limiting to whatever magazines you have on hand. So these are not necessarily, you know, if I had unlimited images to pick from, what I would pick, but on hand, this is what I chose. And so I'm going to take some white gesso, and this is the heaviest one I have, so that's why I'm going to use this. It's white and pretty opaque, and I'm just going to start sort of smushing in around the edges, trying to do a little bit of a blend here. Just to create a little bit more of a painterly look to this thing, and maybe kind of a dreamy look to this thing, to be honest, because I think that's kind of what I see in this is, you know, faith is, let me quote it, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So maybe these are representing things not seen. and sort of idyllic in some way. Okay. All right, am I gonna stop? Maybe not. Oh, I was gonna, you know what I was thinking I was gonna do is continue that fence and just draw it out. So maybe I need to soften that right there. I see this technique a lot in other art journals, and so I've been wanting to play with it. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna let that dry and then I will come back. Okay, now I think I'll go ahead, while those are drying, I'm gonna go ahead and try doing some of the doodle circles. And I'm using some colored scratch paper, and I'll do some on the front and on the back on this. Same on this. And then cut them out. And I really don't know, really not sure what to use, except I think I'll try some in black, and then I'll try some in different colors, because I'm not really sure what I'm looking for here. So I'm just going to get some of this cheap acrylic black paint from the Dollar Tree and start with that just to see what happens. And let's see, let me find a brush that I'm gonna use one of these, just not, this is the one I usually do decoupage with. So I'm thinking just kind of some rough circles as far as doodle circles, but they've got to be substantial enough to cut out. So okay, I am back, and I have been thinking about this and looking at it, and I've decided to change my plan, because so I did the circles, I let them dry, and I did cut them out, and I cut one out and cut the middle out to test my thought of, you know, we need a hole for one of our prompts. And I just don't like the look of that at all. I think that looks pretty ugly. And so I have these. I'll have to use these in some other project. So then I start thinking about, and this is something that I'm in about 4 Bible studies all about the subject of faith. It's the same book we're using. It's Kenneth Hagin's book on faith. And so this scripture, you know, I'm used to the King James Version on it, which says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And really trying to understand in my spirit, what does that mean? And because, you know, you pray for something, particularly healing, which is also something I'm studying. And, you know, you pray for something and believe for it, and then it comes, you know. And that's the way, you know, that's what Mark 11:23 and 24 says. It's like you pray for it, and then you stand in faith until it comes, and you just you have to be convinced you already have it. That's what faith is. If you have any question about it, it means you're not really in faith. So this faith is the substance. It's kind of like, and one translation says it's the title deed. So it's kind of like I just bought a couch and they were making it out in California, and it was going to take so many weeks for them to make it. And so I went ahead and paid for it. So I have the receipt, and that I have no doubt in my mind that I have this couch because I have the receipt. And I realized that that's sort of like how faith is. Like, you pray, and if you're really believing it, there's no doubt in your mind, because faith is your title deed, sort of like faith is your receipt. And it says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so I know that that thing is going to be delivered in a couple of weeks, probably. And anyway, that's kind of how I related it to this. So that's our verse this week. But I think that I'm going to actually go over to and use the King James Version, just because I like that one better. And I do have that actually. I have that. That's out in Etsy too. Here's the King James versions of these scriptures. And so I think I'm going to cut this one out and use it. And I'm not sure. So that's about the scripture. But now I'm trying to figure out, how do I make this do what I want it to do? And so I started thinking about like having holes that peek through to some of these things that I put on here. And I got out a sheet of tissue paper, because I thought, well, I could lay a piece of tissue paper over it and put holes in the tissue paper that reveal a little bit about what's behind it. And sort of like faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So that things not seen. So I got this tissue paper out, and I learned from somebody on YouTube how to make it into vellum, so to speak, with wax. And you take a piece of tissue paper and you scrape a candle or paraffin, however you can get paraffin. A candle was what I had at hand. And just scrape little pieces off, and then you iron it into your tissue paper, and it makes it transparent. So here's the piece that I did, and here's where it stops. So you can see how much more it shows where it's got wax on it. So I think I might cut a piece of this out and layer it over the top, and then make holes over some of these things, like this right here and this right here. So that's sort of what I'm thinking now. And then I'll just have to figure out how to put the lettering of the scripture on it. I might just glue the card in the middle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go downstairs and get my candle out that I used. And I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to iron some paraffin into this tissue paper, and then I'll be back. Oh, I'm so mad at myself. I had my camera off. I am so sorry. So here we are, all done. And you didn't get to see what I did. So let me walk through what I did. So I brought this tissue paper back from downstairs, and I used the wax, and I used my grater, like a cheese grater, and grated a candle onto the tissue paper. I had a piece of paper under it and a piece of paper on top of it. Ironed it with a hot iron and pulled the paper off of it, and then it was shiny and very transparent. You can see how transparent it becomes. So I laid it over this, and I was trying to decide, do I want it to be completely glued down, or do I want it where I can like lift it up and look underneath? So I'm going to leave it. I glued it at the top. I used Fabri-Tac, and I'm hoping that that's still wet. I'm hoping that that works. So then I was like, I needed the holes. So I tore holes into this tissue paper, real ragged, with flaps to see it would be clear that it was a hole torn into it. And I did it on the swing, and I did it on the fence, the gate. So it was just all looking kind of, there was no focal point. It was just all kind of the sameness. So I decided to take the scripture and cut it apart, and I used some ribbon. I have a Hug and Snug ribbon from doing junk journaling, and so I glued it on, and I used the matte medium to glue that on. Glued a strip of ribbon in here, and then I just cut the scripture up and glued it to it with the matte medium. And then I looked at the list and realized that I'd forgotten about the circles, that we're supposed to doodle circles. And so I thought, uh-oh. So I got some, because I didn't know what would stick to this wax paper, but I got my gesso out, because gesso will, if anything will stick to it, gesso will. So I put some gesso on my palette, and I just used a small paintbrush, and I just drew some rough circles around it. And you can see where it's kind of beating up on that wax, but it's working. So that's a good thing, because that adds more emphasis and draws your eye to those things and helps you to understand what's going on here, because I have to admit, this one's not super clear, probably. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so, I mean, these are things that aren't seen, and yet, you know, with faith, hopefully, it's just illustrating a point, like, you will get them if you stand in faith eventually. And so it's just kind of a peek forward to what's there. So, you know, probably not one of my clearest illustrations, but that's okay. I got to do a lot of fun stuff, and it's sort of a pretty, pleasing tone. I don't really know what I think about it just yet, but it's done. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.